Lamont Glass, Blackbird Training Group out of Washington. He should be coming up shortly. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be getting going in a second. Lamont's going to be doing a demo, and we'll talk about his journey and all that. He was sent a link, so we should be hearing from him shortly. Let's see here. Meanwhile, while he's coming up, oh, I think he's here.
Hello, man.
Hey there.
Again?
We got the black and white version again.
Yeah, okay. How did I fix this last time?
Yeah, it is actually kind of neat, though.
Now I'm gone. Right, there you go.
Nice, scary, creepy effect to it.
Okay, how do I fix this? Is that the camera?
You know what? If you start wielding weapons around, that would be really...
Okay. How do I change the camera? Button up there? No. Picture in picture.
I remember what you mentioned yesterday.
Yeah. Okay, don't need to see that. Don't need to see that. Don't need to see that. No. Show controls. Oh, here we go. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I might see something pausing in the background. That's weird. It was so easy yesterday.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, like, what you...
Oh, got it. Okay. Rear, front. That's the wall.
You got color, though. Close.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Ah,
yeah,
what, a
okay.
What a difference.
Amazing, weird.
We should have did a small clip with you waving weapons. That would have been like... that would have been pretty easy. Save it for like Halloween or something.
Okay, so I'm pretty much ready to go for the demo. It's kind of hard to do anything by myself. So I actually thought we'd do a little piece on like FMA history, talk about sort of weapon sources and stuff. And I was going to tie in some of the, like the European.
No, whatever. Again, I want to show one clip before we jump into things. I'm going to show one clip you did, but seriously, whatever you have to offer is fine. So, but well, anyhow, I want to officially welcome to FMA Discussion, episode 25, featuring here Lamont Glass of Blackbird Training Group. And thank you for coming on, taking the time to do this.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right. So I know we talked about a little about yesterday. So how things going out there, and with the crisis, and how you are managing to stay in touch with your students?
They're going pretty well. Obviously, we haven't been really tight with all my students. I've been doing a lot of live stream. I already had a fair amount of background material, all the fundamentals that we do in the club are online already, so that they always just had that as a resource to go back and reference. So that's there. But about half my students are in healthcare, and so they're working in fairly dangerous fields. I don't know if this is an escape for them, but I'm not at the same time. I'm not really pushing to like, hey, let me get involved with whatever you're doing. Let's make time for an online session. I've got people who are like jonesing, like, hey, you want to get together? I'm like, you can't get together right now.
No, I know.
One of the nice things about sort of the broader Piketty family that we've got, there's a lot of people sending out group sessions, and it's actually a cool opportunity for them not just to see me as an instructor, but to see a lot of other high-level instructors from around that are streaming their classes, and a lot of these aren't necessarily public. I run a weekly public live stream on my YouTube channel, but for these others, there's Google Hangouts or Zoom meetings or whatever that that are happening. It's actually a really neat opportunity if they take advantage of it to see other instructors, see how they move, see some different takes on the art.
No, I agree. I mean, the people that have been proactive using Zoom, I love them, particularly if they have a pretty big kids based program, are staying afloat. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and all that. So people who jumped on that were proactive, getting things going, and and all that. The school I teach out of, for example, he's been doing that, and so those who jumped on it. But like you mentioned, I mean, there's even though this is bad and all that, but to reiterate you were saying, there's resources out there. Like I've gotten a couple invites to do stuff and online, all that, and I'm going to take advantage of it because you can always learn more. You know what I mean? You can always see it from a different perspective and all that. So hopefully people during this time will take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into the FMA, like assuming you didn't just jump in, like what was your pre-FMA martial arts that you did? Or
I think like a lot of us, I was actually thinking about this last night. Like I started Isshin-ryu karate when I was 12, right in there. And that was right before Karate Kid, right? I just went to the local community dojo, it was at the community center. I think just like most of us did, it was close here. It was cheap, and so that's where my parents sent me. And it was a great school. I stayed there, I think from like 11 or 12 to 15, something like that, dropped out because of high school. And then in college, I got back into Goju-ryu, dropped out because of college. And then finally after college, got into Kaji Kembo. And then at that point, after college, I was moving seasonally, and I was enough into the martial arts that I was really just sampling. Like in college, I had done some judo, and so I had like a little bit of grappling, and I was in the karate and the Kaji Kembo background. I moved to Wyoming. I got into a really good Kempo school there, and I was seasonally there. I was training to be a wildlife biologist, and when you do that, you do seasonal work, and then usually in the wintertime, you're off somewhere. So I was in Wyoming for 6 to 8 months of the year, and then I was usually back in Seattle for the wintertime. And so whenever I went back to Seattle, I tried something different. And so I had a core Kempo, and that's when and the Kempo and Kaji Kempo guys, we've always had kind of that loose affiliation with, Polynesian/Filipino martial arts. It's not necessarily tight, but it's there. And so I'd seen it, I kind of heard of it, definitely sticks banging had happened once or twice, just because. And then eventually I got connected into FMA, but it was kind of always on the back, sort of on the backside. So I had I've got a really sort of eclectic background in a bunch of different stuff. I'm a crappy grappler, I'm an average kickboxer, and then I got into weapons, and that's sort of what I wound up choosing to focus on.
Oh, right on. I mean, we all start somewhere. It's like around our age group. Like I'm guessing you're in your 40s.
Yeah, I'm late 40s. I'm 48. I had to think about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 55. Wait till you get in your 50s. But so then okay. So let's jump into FMA before we. I know PKT, Jared, and all that, and we're definitely going to cover all that. But what was your first exposure to FMA? Who, where, and when?
So my Kaji Kembo, one of my Kaji Kembo instructors, and I had a couple of them, but he had a family system, and it was I don't think it was a super complex system. It was he did some double stick work, and I just got a really brief exposure to that from that. So so that was kind of a taste, and then one of my fellow students in that Kaji Kembo class, he had some like Inasano blend, that he had sort of dabbled in as well. But really, like my connection to it came with I'm kind of a martial arts nerd, and there's I found Dog Brothers Tape 6 tape, right? Given the time at a used bookstores, and it was stick versus other weapons. So it's stick versus staff, stick versus nunchuck, stick versus whip, and it's all Dog Brothers, right? So they're really hitting each other with sticks, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is fighting with a weapon. And so that was like my main connection. And then, so I grabbed the rest of those videos. I got with my Kaji Kembo guy who had Inasano blend background, and we started training in it just off the videos. And the core of that first Dog Brothers series is Eric Noss, and the first 3 videos is all Pikini, right? It's
no. You have them on VHS?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I know, because it's funny. The reason I'm asking is because I have the whole set in VHS when I went to go see Mark back in early 2000s, and I'm not sure if he had them on DVD. So I was just curious if you got them on VHS. Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are all VHS. Yeah, absolutely. That was again. It was at that time. It was tape 6. So
yeah, I have it. I just I don't know where they are, but yeah, I mean, I have the whole set. But not much to your point though. What people don't understand, it was all Eric Nouse. I mean, this is before Mark, got with the Machados and started climbing the ladder and Sound Blend. But that beginning, that was all Eric Nouse. I mean, like you mentioned, PKT for sure.
Yeah, he definitely spearheaded that first series. And then I think that first series, like 5 is the grappling, and you see one of the Machado brothers. I can't remember who it is at this point, on there. And he's basically doing BJJ. They're like grappling. He's like, and I have a stick, and I throw away the stick, and then I'm going to choke him out, and it's like, but you have a stick.
Yeah, I know, right. But to the pure grappler, he's going to choke you out or lock you up. So the sticks, I guess, for their point of view, is incidental.
Yeah, and that, I think their viewpoint has changed. They've got different views now, 20 years later, than
pure
BJJ perspective at that point.
Yeah, but what a beginning, though. I mean, just trendsetters. I just have the utmost profound respect for those guys in the beginning, what they were doing in the late 80s. I just, I just think
absolutely.
Yeah, they were just trendsetters. When people talk, I'm like, no, man. Those guys were, just so much respect for all of them,
I think they demystified stick fighting. They made it not the scary thing that you can't do. And I think that was, if they did nothing else, they just made it that you can do this without dying.
Yeah,
and it allowed the rest of us to sort of follow that path of, I can actually test my material. We're using rattan because it doesn't break bones. That's why we have rattan sticks.
No, right. Yeah.
So,
no, I'm with you. I think they really set the forefront, because the others that followed, whether it be teachers or systems that kind of bridge into that, I mean, they were the trendsetters, for sure. Yep. Like my instructor Burton, I mean, he was one of them. So in his programs, it's heavily sparring and all that. And but where he saw that, found that, learned that, got exposed to that, digested that, embraced it, it was all from there.
Yep.
Those days, absolutely. So all right, so you got, sounds like you got, just what time frame, generally speaking, is this? Were you're the school owner there? We're playing around this.
Oh, you mean here now?
No, I mean like back then when you referenced the VHS tape.
Okay. So that would have been probably 99. I'm guessing. Somewhere right in there, 98, 99, somewhere in there. And then sort of had that sort of in the background. And another one of the, again, my seasonal trips back to Seattle, I spent 6 months doing Kabbalah Serrata. Again, I think because of that, actually, I remember it. It was because I'd seen the Dog Brothers videos. I'm like, oh, well, this is interesting. There's got to be somebody in Seattle teaching that. And there was a Serrata instructor, and I basically did privates with him, and all he taught was private. So I didn't really see any other students. I didn't see any senior students. So I got a very, very limited view of the art. And, it was great learning from him. But, the whole time, I remember the whole time learning this, I was like, this doesn't look like Dog Brothers.
No, I mean, we got to be honest. I mean,
so I had very contrasting views. And even he had talked about his instructor was out of California and had seen Dog Brothers and talked about it. It's like, I'm not jumping into a Dog Brothers fight with guys with 30-inch sticks with an 18-inch Serrata stick. I mean,
it's funny you mentioned that. Burton was telling me that their sticks were shorter. I think he referenced 22 or so, but
18 to 24 is what I was told when I was in there.
He said 22 or 24, so that totally makes sense. And And I always wonder about that. Like, why would they? And I asked him, and his reference was because I guess over there it simulated like a lead pipe. I mean, I can't confirm.
That's a really, even then, I mean, so 24 isn't very long, but it's, I'm convinced it's actually because Angel Caballos was 4'11", right?
Yeah, he's so
he's not going to carry around a 30-inch stick.
Yeah.
But when you have, Americans that are 6'2" carrying the same size stick as a guy who didn't reach 5 feet, it's like,
no, I know. Imagine that.
Like, and I had a very limited view of it, but it still looks a little weird to me.
Yeah, no, like imagine that. Like you go to the gathering, you got a 22-inch stick, and there's Eric Nels with a 30-inch, 1-inch diameter stick, and that vicious backhand.
Yeah. You gotta own, like if you're that Serrata guy, you better own your middle ground, and you better own that, because you're either gonna get whacked on the long end or you're gonna get grappled on the close end.
Well, here's the thing. Because exactly, like you might be trying to do the lock and block and all that, but it's not stopped there, because what people don't know about Eric Nels is he played defensive end in college, and he was a little lacrosse player. Very comfortable running around with a stick and liked contact.
Yeah,
it didn't matter if he was going to run into you. But much to your point, yeah, no, that's interesting though. So, no, this is great. So so you stay with him, sounds like 6 months?
Yeah, I was working seasonally. So I was, these are always limited time frame pieces. I'd be in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for, 6 months. And then I'm back to Wyoming, where I'm back to my temple and sort of my seasonal job. And then I kind of did that for, I think, 6 years. I think I was back and forth between Wyoming and Seattle.
Okay. So at least you stuck with doing something. I mean.
Yeah. It wasn't like I was totally dabbling. I had a core art that I kept coming back to. I would practice, and then I was essentially unemployed, usually back in the winter. So I was being a martial arts nerd because I could, and just living off of savings and learning martial arts. And then go back for my seasonal job. And so I would actually teach Kempo for some Kempo instructors, but I was always trying to learn something else on the side, besides the Kempo end of things. And that's where I ran into the very, again, most of what I did then was Kaji Kempo or Kempo, and then again the other stuff that I wasn't really core arts, or BJJ and Serrata and some of this playing around with other students with like the Dog Brothers material.
Yeah, sure. So was there anybody after your 6-month experience with the Caballas?
Not until we started chasing FMA more seriously. I basically moved to Wyoming full time. I was now an instructor at the Kempo school. And kind of like a lot of black belts, I was like, I'm like a secondary black belt at that point, and I'm like, one of the things was I remember on my black belt test, there's kind of the interview portion. You've done all the forms and self-defense techniques, and there's kind of this interview portion before they beat the snot out of you at the other end of it, and I knew a question would come up like, what do you think we could do better? My recommendation is don't hand in a 5-page document of all the things that you think we could do better. One of the things on that was like weapons. Like we need more weapon work. We need, we teach sword and, staff and like nunchucks. It's like, how about something that's more practical, like knife?
Right, that you see on the street or something.
And so that was already like in my mind, like things that we had to work on. And one of the things that, as you became an instructor in that school, one of the things that you were supposed to do is sort of focus on something, learn something new and bring it back to the studio.
Oh, that's great.
We always had this exploration that like, you want to learn sword, go to Bob, so not everybody was equally good or even had the same thing. But if you had an interest at those upper levels, you should chase them. And so myself and one of the other black belts there, actually 2 of the other black belts there, were like, this FMA stuff, we were like, we need weapon work, especially like knife self-defense and stuff like that. We knew that it was like, these are kind of sketchy, so we were looking for them. And then 2 of the other black belts and myself, Nathan Nedick and Jason Jones, started basically trying to put to gather more information. So I already had the Kabbalah Sarada and the Dog Brother stuff. And then we started like every videotape that we could get our hands on.
Okay.
You know, we would start getting in, and being the Kempo nerds that we were, we tried to put together sort of a basic curriculum. And after about a year of that, it kind of fell on its face, and we're like, we're not getting anywhere. And we were getting all these drills from sort of Inosanto Blend guys that were all kind of related, but it wasn't a system. And when you try to put that together from the outside, so we eventually were like, this is not working. We need a teacher. Well, that shouldn't have been, you know, a giant leap for anybody, but we needed a teacher. So we went down to Salt Lake City, which is about 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away driving, and ran into Jared Ohongi. We had contact with him before. He had brought Nene Tortal, which is his uncle, and that's who he had first started studying with. And he had brought him up to Wyoming for a previous seminar. And so we kind of had a link to him that way. And so he was the first guy we called.
Okay, great.
And so we went down, visited him. And of course, he, with the Pikiti, which is his core, was the same as the Dog Brothers material. That was sort of the basis of what we were doing. And it was like, okay, this meshes. And not only does it mesh, that there's a system behind it. And
you have a syllabus, an outline, got that.
And just the cohesiveness. Because we kind of had a bunch of drills, and not that we didn't learn anything, it wasn't cohesive. Like the way we were taught Pikiti, like it was. I think we went down for we go down to his group class on a Saturday, you know, a couple hour group class, stay for some privates afterwards, take the home, work that for a couple weeks, and do it again. Like we did that twice, and then we went to a GT seminar down there, and it was like, this is absolutely what we want to do. Like this, there's clearly a cohesive system here, and everything's interrelated, and the knife relates to the stick, and that relates to the empty hand, and it is a system. And curriculum-wise, as you know, and we were all instructor level martial arts at that time. We were, you know, and so we were getting material pretty rapidly because of that. We just knew how to move, and again, Kempo has a lot of relationships, movement-wise, back to that's very similar to the Filipino martial arts, even though that's taught totally differently. The movement patterns are very similar, and so we were acquiring the material pretty quickly, but it was obvious that this was a good system that we really chase, and it really brings it together, and that just had something we hadn't seen before.
So, all right. So then, I mean, this sounds like this is around like early 2000s or something.
Yeah. So I think we started that about 2002, and then sort of formally started with Jared sort of full-time, well, regularly 2004.
Okay. So, all right. So is it fair to say from that point on, you've been with him from then?
Yeah. I would say 2004 was our first year sort of with Jared in terms of as a formal student-teacher relationship.
So as far as he goes, I mean, you know, I've heard nothing but good things. He seems like a personable guy and what have you, and obviously well qualified and so forth. Just as far as he goes, you know, for his interpretation, all that, like, what can you tell us about like what he stresses, you know, what attracted you to him, what you liked, you know, and all that.
So from very early on, he had, so he has a really sort of practical approach to Filipino martial arts. And the other thing that he was transitioning into was GT had taught, you know, if you look at the different curriculums that he taught over the years, the older curriculum was the Dose Methodist curriculum, which for lack of a better term is a civilian build. It's like, I have 5 years to make you into a full-fledged martial artist, right? Okay. The Tri-V is, GT went back to the Philippines, you know, he started teaching the military, and he's like, I have 6 months to make you dangerous.
So that, you know, it's funny. Matter of fact, I don't mean to pause you there, because to me, this is somewhat significant. The Tri-V formula, I remember that, I think it was Carl Atienza telling me that, you know, guy, he'd come out with this Tri-V, and it was around 2003, 2004.
Somewhere in there. I don't know the exact date, because I'm post it.
Yeah. I know it's definitely around there. And so you obviously, okay, so you got that then, and okay.
Yeah, we were kind of a transition zone. Jared had started learning, he started with 64 attacks, which is Dose Methodist and all of that. And then he got transitioned by GT into the Tri-V. Okay. You know, to the point where I remember, like, we were going through Sagitas and, you know, the way that it used to be taught. And then, you know, and he's, and Jared at the time was a guru. He was not a Tuhan or what, whatever master instructor. He's just another guy. And he's learning the art just like we are. And so he was like, I was like, so where did the next set of CDs? Like, GT told me that I don't need that older technology. Like, that's old technology. You don't need it.
Just for the viewers, if I'm not mistaken, and you correct me if I am, the Tri-V formula, the way it was told to me was on the angulation, body, feet, weapon. Am I correct?
To make it more, it's hard to get a good definition of Tri-V, but think of it as a high grade of the Pikiti system for high percentage techniques that'll make you dangerous quickly. What the Dose Methodist is a exhaustive examination of all of the subsystems in Pikiti, like deep into knife, deep into stick, deep into sword, deep into empty hand. Tri-V at its heart is a high grade of that material. I need high percentage techniques that make you dangerous quickly and can be taught in a fairly quick manner, right? Okay. So you're going to be grosser body motions, right? We don't have time to, quite frankly, teach you. And I'm saying this like, if you imagine that you have to turn out a fighter in 6 months.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So, obviously the footwork will be there. But it's going to be highly aggressive. Not that Pikiti wasn't aggressive before, but you're going to emphasize putting the guy on his heels, using that, putting him defensive, set up his defensive posture and attack that. So basic principles behind that are going to be, you close behind your weapon, you take out the weapon arm, and then, you close to finish the guy, right? There's all these ideals that you, like 3 strikes, you bridge under contact, you take the weapon hand, you terminate, which would be a part of that closing. But really it's, and a lot of the other older Tuhans have talked about this, is that it's not the full system. It's not designed to be the full system. It's designed to be a sort of fast access system. And so one of the things that if you want to learn the whole system, that you need to go back and learn the whole system, which is Dose Method.
Material before that.
So, and so, but because of that, if you are, and so Jared was at the time, he was a police officer. He was on the training squad for Salt Lake City Police Department. What he was doing, well, and he at the time he had a contract with 19th Special Forces Group for being their, one of their instructors. So he's teaching law enforcement, police every day, basically, right? So the Tri-V was perfect for what he's doing. And so
I see where you're going with this, right? For them who maybe didn't have the time to. Yeah. No, gotcha. Right. No,
so and the way and he actually developed a curriculum for Salt Lake City Police Department, and apparently it was used some other where. He still it was called TRICOM, which he actually still teaches, and I'm sure he's developed it since what it was in 2004. But the core of that material was a lot of this Pikiti material because it had a lot of these elements into it.
So the other thing too, I wanted to ask you about that before, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this term is not accurate. Along with the Tri-V, because I did quite a bit of Pikiti, was 4-gate. Your 1, your 2, your 3, your 4. Mm-hmm. That would be the bridging. Am I accurate there?
Well, okay. So think of Tri-V gets taught more through okay. So you've seen Filipino martial arts with Cinco Terros as their foundation, right? So the first thing you learned is let me get myself on the camera. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, and then 5 for your thrust, whatever your thrust is. Tri-V actually goes similar to that in that it bases off of those angles first. Unlike if you had the abecedario way back when, the first thing you learned was actually lateral strikes because they actually countered the 5 attack strikes. But that's a curriculum thing. The core of Tri-V is angular striking, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like.
What I got. Okay.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 is not only your power strikes. It's also. Let me get a stick. Or knife. So and just get on the camera here. If I'm cutting angle 1, This is also a 4-wall block, right? Cutting angle 2, that's a 4-wall block. 3, this is a low 4-wall, 4, low 4-wall. Does that make sense?
No, this way it was kind of presented to me that, and again, this is from Ron. I mean, and it sounds like he's going where you're going, but you know, the whole bridging there and Puyan, if I was to come up with 3 or 4 kind of covering and all that.
So you can, right? So 3 and 4 become actually Payong, right? So
okay, right.
So I go 3 and 4. These could be my rising strikes. If I if I change my angle, that's a Payong block. I'm under.
Okay, that's the term that was used.
And I'm under my block. So it's the same. That's exactly right. And we will use those. And again, it's using that same conceptual model where we teach you 4 strikes, and then here's major defenses in terms of your wall blocking with your 1 and 2. Your Payong is also protecting your head using your 3 and 4 strikes. So again, you're using a very simplified framework to sort of teach a larger, to expand yourself into a larger core of material.
Okay, that's basically what. Okay, no, that just different wording. That's kind of what was instilled to me. I just did abomination on the pronunciation, but that's a term that was used, like you mentioned, coming up under and all that. So fascinating. Okay, so I'm just going to get in my questions here. Because I definitely want to get to your grouping and all that, and I'm just, of course, along for demo and all that. So now you're spending time with this. At what point did you where you went deep and where you turned a switch and you made it a mindset to be functional? Does that make?
I don't think that we ever went away from that. So because we were learning distance, right? I wasn't a regular student. And I actually came back to my Kempo instructor as well. In my Kempo class, we learned all the techniques and everything else on Thursday, but we fought on Tuesday. Every Tuesday was a sparring night. And so when we learned FMA, again, because the Dog Brothers were the first thing that we kind of saw on it, we're like, that's FMA. And so when we got the material from Jared, we'd bring it back. We're like, okay, we drilled the material. Okay, let's fight it. And we would do that until we went down, and we just kept doing that. So I don't think we ever had this spot where we weren't aimed at function that way. Because we always had that core of, well, you got to be able to fight this stuff, right? So.
No, that makes sense because your first exposure was Dog Brothers. So it wasn't like you were doing drills and all that. So that completely makes sense why you were, okay. So I guess before we leave, Jared, I know you touched on this, we kind of got off into the Tri-V and what have you like that. As far as what you got, your own development, not just as far as, physical attributes and what have you, but what has he gifted you as far as being the teacher you are today and all that?
I think, it's kind of a lot of my sort of me as a martial artist, I actually attribute to my Kempo instructor because we were his, that's where I went, every day for 12 years kind of thing, that kind of thing. And he instilled a lot of those virtues, taught me how to teach. We had an apprenticeship system of how to teach, and kind of, as I mentioned, he had a very open mind. He was never, he was never closed-minded about it. Like, oh, we can't do this. That you should go out and explore, but if you find something good, bring it back.
No, I love that. Yeah.
And I think that's true. Honestly, I think that's true of a lot of Filipino martial arts. That's the same philosophy that they're like, oh, well, that stuff looks really good. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we've always had that in the system.
No, go there and steal it and bring it back.
So I don't think that was different. I mean, when I went to Jared, I was, in my 30s, I was a person already. So, in terms of forming as a martial artist, I don't think I view him as an instructor and now more as a peer. And we've always, he's always been my teacher. but he's never been my master, for lack of a better term, if that kind of makes sense, right?
No. I get because of your age.
Yeah.
No, I see where you're going with this. Yeah. Okay. So is it fair to say then he had from what you were distilled from your Kempo teacher, he kind of I mean, obviously there wasn't confliction. I mean, it's not,
no, he didn't care. We would bring it back and he had a very fighting centric base as well. I mean, like that was he's 12 years older than me, so he's 60 now. I have no desire to get into, what's that?
Oh, I would have never guessed he was 60. Oh, wow.
Oh, so my Kempo instructor.
Oh, I was going to say Jared. Oh,
Jared,
okay.
I think is actually 46, 47. He's a year, he's actually younger than me. But my Kempo instructor, I still wouldn't want to get into a ring like if we were going to duke this out with Andy Han. Nah. Yeah. I still wouldn't want to do it.
Six, sure. But
yeah. No, he was the guy that you would hit him hard in a match, and it was like this Terminator, like, It was like, okay, now it's on. It's like, oh,
coming
crap.
Coming straight forward. You know, and you can't run.
No, absolutely no. So, it was, but yeah, he was very. My Kempo instructor, Jim, Seafood Jim, see if you're watching. He always had this thing. Is like, I don't want anybody to hit you harder than I do.
Oh, that was nice. So then, all right. So what? I guess obviously, being exposed to the tapes of the Dog Brothers and all that. Obviously, it sounds like it manifested this fighting, spirit in you, and wanting to test and all that. What can you tell the viewers? I mean, like, why is that? And we touched upon this a little yesterday when me and you were talking. And why do you feel that's important? Like, hey, if you're teaching this stuff, you might want to know if it, works or not. And I'm 100% with you.
So fundamentally, so I'm, I mentioned I trained to be a wildlife biologist. I don't have a high risk profession. I don't. I've been in 2 fights as an adult. Because and now I have no desire to get into street fights, and so I can't prove myself in a street fight anymore. So and so where does your authority as an instructor come from, right? The lowest level of authority is your instructor says you're good, you should go train with him, and so hopefully somebody knows who your instructor is, and that means something. The other one is, can you fight? And if fundamentally, if someone's looking to you to teach them to fight, it's can you fight? And I didn't, not that I entered into kickboxing or anything like that when I was in Kempo, but especially in the weapon arts, it's really difficult to prove that you can fight. There's no leagues. There's no
platform.
There's no UFC. You can go to the karate dojo, like, hey, look at all our trophies on the wall. And maybe that means something, and presumably it does if, within whatever realm of martial arts that you are. But in FMA, not so much, right? There's really loose affiliations for these competitive circuits. So beyond what that it means to the consumer, the person who walks in your school, it's to you, can you fight? Right. Yeah. And you can learn that in your school. Like me and Jason beat the hell out of each other for years, but that's kind of the 2 of us beating the hell out of each other for years, and whoever we could get to drag in with us. And you've got to fight more and different people. And that's what tournaments are for. That's what Dog Brothers are for. Any of these events, and there, fortunately, because of Dog Brothers, there's more and more of these events out there that are allowing this to happen. But there's these venues for competition, venues for, getting hit by a stick from a stranger. And if you've been in a small school, how everybody in the school fights. I know. Sam, I'm going to go long distance with him, and I can usually whack him on the leg. You already know your game plan because you fought him 20 times.
No, I understood. Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is you don't fear anybody in your school. There's too much trust involved, right? I trust my guys not to kill me, that went here. When I get into a floor on Dog Brothers, as good as they are, it's a really high intensity environment. I don't trust them that much. I can't trust them because they're trying to knock me out, and I'm trying to knock them out.
Right. No, they're there to, I mean, like Mark says, I mean, you're in charge of yourself and your own safety.
Yeah. And because of that lack of trust, because of the adrenaline that gives you, because I don't get an adrenaline dump when I spar my own students. I don't. It's not.
No, I know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it there. So there's a mental fight that you do to get on that floor. Like, do I want to do this?
No,
and I think I've talked about this on some other interviews. The first year I went, I was 2013. I've been doing this for 9 years. So I'm a fairly advanced guy. I'm a guru, whatever. And I got out there, and I remember getting out there, and I can remember the adrenaline, and I remember the deep. I'm doing deep breathing to deal with it. As I get out there. But when I watched the fight, it wasn't that I couldn't fight anymore. I could fight, but I don't remember a lot of those fights if I didn't see them on video. I got my first year of fighting, I have snapshots. I have, I remember like little bit parts. And if you listen to what interview people are post bad events, they don't have a good coherent idea of what happened.
Right.
And that was absolutely true of my first year of fighting. I was fighting under adrenaline, and there was a fight. I hit a guy in the leg. My stick came out of my hand and went flying behind me. I turned around, dove, and I grabbed my stick in the air, finished my roll, stood up, got kneed in the chest, and tried to stab the guy. What I remember out of that is losing the stick. I have a mental image of stick being on the ground and me reaching with my left hand, standing up and getting kneed.
Yeah.
And then we grappled and went to the ground again. I got off the floor, and one of my students who was there was Ben, is like, "That was an awesome roll." I'm like, "What roll?"
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, again, I can't tell you, I trained Mark Denny, but I didn't actually do a Dog Brother, California, Connecticut. It just was tough. But I could just, like, for the people, like, there's no, if you're telling people, man, you didn't have anxiety or fear, I mean, come on.
You're lying. I mean,
like, how many people?
There are guys out there that sort of senior Dog Brothers that, they don't, because they've, two on Nick Papadakis, another Pikiti, two on. Like, you go out there, he's like, "Oh yeah, what do you want to do?" Oh yeah, because he's done hundreds of stick fights.
No, right, no.
There's nothing you can do to him that he hasn't seen before or felt before. And so for him, like, he's just totally casual about it. He doesn't get an adrenaline dump at that, probably. I won't talk for him, but you can see he's like, "Oh yeah, what do you want to do?" Well, okay, well, good.
Yeah. I mean, but
so,
like you said, though, so many years, how many gatherings, but for the person who's done a few times, I mean, no, man, that's overwhelming. And you got everybody watching and cheering, and you are the focus. You know what I mean? That's not easy.
In Dog Brothers, they call it chatter. Like, this is your brain talking to you about, hey, that bruise on your thigh is kind of, you don't have to go out there again, because nobody's making you do this. This is a battle with you to get on the floor another time. Yeah. And that's where that development, that's how we challenge ourselves as people, is to grow. And it's like, you face your fears. And I don't like fighting, for lack of, I don't know if that's the right word. One of my best examples of a fighter is Randy Couture. And he'll talk about, like, he loves, literally, like, I love the feel of breaking the guy's will, like grinding on him on the ground and hurting him. And he can feel where the guy's like, "Fuck it, I'm done." I'm not that guy. Like, I joke about this. I'm a technical geek that has to test the stuff that he's teaching to make sure that what he's teaching is good. So that's my approach to it. I don't really like to get out there and inflict pain.
No, I'm not that.
And there's like, you don't have to do this. So, but everybody has a different reason for it. And even between years, people have a different reason for it. Why they're doing this again.
Yeah.
And for most people, it's a test of themselves, because at some point it's not, oh, I've proven myself as a stick fighter. Because a lot of these guys have. That doesn't mean they have to get on the floor again. It
Keep
may
going.
be,
No. And no, you're exactly correct. Because when I was talking to Burton, I was talking about the early days. I'm like, why? And he referenced a lot of what you said was, it was a growth period. Like, it's not so much he wanted to see what he was capable of, what he can endure, how he handled the emotions, how he handled the stress, much of what you said, and all that, which I think is all fantastic. Because like you said, everybody has their own reasons and all that. But I'm with you. Like, I don't, I've done, full out stick fighting, not in the drug bars, but out here. But but I'm with you. Like, I have no interest in hurting anybody. Like, I want to test my skills and I want to see how to the level I can go and all that. But but I would feel terrible if, like, I took somebody's kneecap, or, you know what I mean? I would feel, I mean, I'm just, just for an example, I would feel terrible,
so one of the things when in the Dog Brothers environment, I'm not saying you're not trying to hurt another person. You're trying to, you ever heard the term shoot to stop, right? Where that's kind of what you're doing. Like, I'm trying to shut him down so he doesn't hurt me. Even if the intention is, I'm not actually trying to hurt him. I'm trying to take him out of his game enough that he can't hurt me. And at least that's my approach to it. There may be some guys who are different about it. So, and in doing that, you may hurt the other guy. You can't push those boundaries and not hurt the other guy. Well, let me say, there's a difference between hurt and injure, right? I don't want to injure another guy. I don't mind hurting him. Unfortunately, hurting someone is kind of part and parcel. One of the other things about that, again, I'm, now after doing this for a little bit, I'm a guy who's happy to hurt his friends, the guys who's going to drink a beer with afterwards, for fun. I don't really worry about, like, can I do violence on a stranger who's coming to hurt my family? That's no longer a question for me. That's not a leap that I have to make for myself anymore, which it might have been 10 years ago. No,
I got you. No, absolutely. Like, that gets turned off when it comes to family. Like, that's, no, I got what you're saying. As far as the compare and contrast, as far as hurt and injured. No, that was nicely put. Yeah. So then let's get to, because I want to, this is all fantastic, by the way. I've been watching your videos and all that, and I'm going to definitely, when we get the end, tell everybody about your channel. But I love what I see. I'm a fan. I think what you're doing out there is fantastic stuff. What can you tell us about the Warrior Tibon Tibon? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep, that's right. So Tibon Tibon is essentially Ilongo for gathering, Ilongo Filipino dialect for gathering. So it's the Warrior Gathering. We kind of, we actually, the co-founder of it is Tuhan Belton Lubis out of Bellevue, Washington. And he basically asked GT, like Grand Tuhan Gahe, like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, great idea, call it the Tibon Tibon. So we did.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so the Tibon Tibon is, it originally started as a bunch of, and it was a couple years after I had done my first gathering. I had made contacts in sort of the Dog Brothers realm. And so there's several of us in the Washington area that were like, we should get together. And so we started doing that. And that was the nucleus of that. And so it started as kind of a Dog Brothers light, low armor stick fighting. And then that was in 2015. It was our first year. And then we've held it annually every year. We held it twice last year, and hopefully it'll be sort of biannual as we go forward. It's kind of changed over time, where originally we were like very much making it a Dog Brothers light kind of thing, but we wanted to make it more entry level. Like, it's not it's lighter contact, it's hard contact, not full contact or real contact, as Dog Brothers would like to call it. But we wanted a minor leagues, before, if you wanted to, push yourself here before you had to jump into Dog Brothers.
Oh, that's neat. Oh, I like that. I like that.
So that was the idea. There wasn't a lot of options, and there still aren't a lot of options for that. In the last couple of years, we've had an influx from the historic European martial arts crew come in. And it's right. It's open. This isn't a Filipino martial arts thing. We've had, and it's mostly Filipino martial arts, but we've tried to include everybody. Annually, I will send out invitations to Kobudo groups. Anybody who wants to swing a sword or a stick or whatever. I'm like, hey, come by and try. Most of the time, it's Filipino martial arts guys, and now the historic European martial arts guys. The last gathering that I have, I think it was mostly HEMA groups. So it's really interesting that way. The HEMA guys, because my group is actually a crossover group. We actually, my colleague group spun off a Scottish broadsword group a couple years ago. So we kind of straddle both realms there. But because you fight with either polypropylene or steel, they use a heavier armor component than you typically do, like in a Dog Brothers environment. But you have to, because you're fighting with steel.
Yeah, I hope so. Oof. Yeah. Well, that sounds really neat, though. I like what you guys are doing, that how you referenced it minor league, just so they can get their feet wet, so to speak. And
like if you're like, oh, I want to wear shin pads and arm pads in addition to my gloves, it's like, I don't care.
Yeah, right.
If that's what it takes for you to get comfortable, great. Go for it. I don't, and because it's about your growth. And then maybe next year you lose the shin guards because you're comfortable about slipping your legs or whatever.
I like that.
So we really, again, in the beginning it was more Dog Brothers Light, and now it's just an open sparring environment. It's very much come out, it's not a tournament. There's no brackets, anything like that. It's go find a partner, agree to how you're going to fight.
Yeah, what you're going to fight with.
Is this, agree to how big rattan you're going to use if you're fighting with rattan. Is this 3/4 inch rattan or is this 1 1/4, right? So that we're all on the same page about what we're doing here. Do you want to allow ground grappling? Do you want to allow kicking? Or is this just going to be a full-on Dog Brothers, fight? Great. Well, we can do that too. So it really allows your comfort level to grow, depending on, it's like some guys, like this year I had a knee brace. I strained my MCL, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it standing and please don't kick me in that leg. But it allowed me to fight, when otherwise I couldn't, because I can do that. So
no, that's fantastic. No, wow, I like the whole concept behind that. Wow. Because we gotta get to your demo, but something I want the viewers to see is something I really liked on your channel there, and I'm gonna pull this up, and if the tech gods are with me, we should be good. So hopefully this will. Can you see this?
I see a third channel, but it's blue something's coming on.
Okay. So I thought this was really neat.
Okay.
With your son, just for targeting on the thrust. So I'm gonna go ahead and
okay. Simple training tool. It's a piece of cardboard with a hole cut in. Besides the hole, this one's a little bit bigger. You can use a business card size, whatever.
Don't move it.
So this is a focus. This is for thrusting. So the easiest thrust. I talked about this a little bit on People Talking Kali last week as an easy training tool. So I thought I'd describe it on a video. Again, so he's just going to present it this way. Hold up a little higher, pal. This way. Right, and on a straightforward thrust, I want you practice hitting my target. Maybe a variation on footwork. Hey, and figure out where that's going to be. Now, doing a straight thrust is pretty straightforward, right? Pretty much.
Okay, so I thought that was really neat. I'm gonna let you take over, but I know you want to with a knife, which is obviously easier because your proximity is closer and all that. So, what say you? I thought it was pretty neat.
Okay, so we kind of talked about thrusting earlier, and Pikiti closes sort of conceptually, doesn't do a lot of long range thrusting. It's theoretical. If I poke you, you're not dead. Even if I hit you through the throat, unless I sever your spinal cord with my thrust, your arms are still free, and that's a great time to trade a shot. So usually Piketty doesn't do a lot of long range thrusting, and so when that happens, it's kind of a we don't usually do it at long distance, but the close range thrusting is after, I've controlled his arm. Maybe I grabbed his wrist. I grabbed, the guard of his weapon. I could have grabbed his weapon, right? If it's a stick forward, right? You looked at to the classic, if you've seen the Dog Brothers videos, Eric Noss, roof block, overwrap, stab.
Cross coming right up.
And so that is a classic example of I cover under Payong, I control your weapon, you can't hit me, I'm going to stab you until you make me stop. And if that's a sword, I can stab you multiple times and you have almost no way to control my hand back there. Well, that's a fight ender, right? And so, but your ability to be able to place your thrust is really, becomes really, really important at that. And that's kind of what that drill is about being able to place your weapon where you want. On an angulated thrust.
No, I thought it was pretty clever. Yeah. What do you got for us? Okay. What do you demo? So whatever. Again, whatever you.
Okay, so let's see. Because I lack a training partner here because of COVID, and it's kind of hard to really demonstrate a lot without a training partner. I thought we'd talk a little bit about history.
Sure.
I'm kind of a martial arts nerd, and so whenever I get involved in a martial art, I usually go deep and try to get a lot involved in the history of it. So one of the things about Filipino martial arts is the Philippines have always been a mixing place for martial cultures, right? There's been waves of colonization that have come through. You see the Kuntao, you see, the Moro fighting arts, off the southern islands, which are not the same, as the Filipino martial arts on the northern islands. And so one of the things that when we investigate this, and for Piketty, they're going to say that this is the native system, the Kali is the truth. And you see a lot of these discussions about what goes on in there. And there's a lot of fighting back and forth about, who does what, is this native or not native? I like to investigate that history of it. So I thought I'd go back and if we talk about Filipino martial arts and, not that we have time for this very long topic, but what several hundred years of colonization by the Spanish did. Right? You hear a lot, the Spanish outlawed weapons, so that's why we use the stick, right? That'll be one claim. It's like, okay, the Spanish actually hired armed Filipinos to go conquer other armed Filipinos.
You go on the galleons to go overseas.
Right,
They
equipped their navy with them. And even if you said, okay, well, the Spanish hired the native tribes, whole piece, said, hey, bring 50 guys and we're going to go conquer said other tribe. And just left it, that's fine within the context of the Philippines. You don't go try to beat the Dutch with a tribe of Filipinos that have whatever their fighting skills is. You need to train them in modern European, military technique to have a chance if you're going to go take on the Dutch somewhere else. And they did that by the thousands, and so and we know, so there's a book out there. You can actually find it on Google Books. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation on this. My Spanish is not great. Somewhere around here, I think I wrote it down. Did I write it down? I'd be bummed if I didn't. Okay. Pontonario de Caballeria. Anyway, I'm butchering it. Anyway, it was a manual published in 1955 in Manila. It's a handbook on how to run a cavalry regiment. It's 455 pages in Spanish, okay? Because this is the armed forces of Spain occupying the Philippines. And this is a manual printed in Manila to, basically, here's your handbook for how to run. And most of this is not about weapon training. It's literally like you should be equipped with 55, horses. And if you're, but it has a whole section on recruit training. Like you need, it takes a year for these new recruits to come in, and your sergeants and your corporal should be doing this, and these are the punishments if they go AWOL. Everything that goes into running a modern military is kind of in this manual for running a military regiment. But part of what it does, it lays out, you've got a new recruit. We know that the Philippines was on the far end of the logistics chain for Spain. It was not a favored spot if you were a young Spanish soldier to go to.
Yeah, all the way across.
You're going to die of disease, and then it takes you 8 months to get there, and you're going to be there for 15 years. This, so unsurprisingly,
sign me up. Yeah,
right, exactly. Send me to the other side of the world, and I'm not going to be back for most of my young adult life, right? So, so these soldiers got sent off. It was hard to get them there. And they never were able to fully, equip those regiments with Spaniards. So they had to fill them out. So they recruited from the Filipinos.
This is interesting. Where did you come across? Like, how did you find out about this manuscript, this book?
There's a group called HEMA Philippines, Historical European Martial Arts Philippines, and I think I ran across it then, or maybe before. But it's I'll send up a link for it so people can see it. It's in Spanish. I was actually translating the Saber training section on it for a while, and my Spanish is terrible. But just to try to get an understanding of what it is. And again, this is not mostly a weapon training manual. But if you look at what it's training, saber and lance, if you're training a new recruit, also rifle or carbine as they call it, these are all elements. You only got 30 days of basic training in sword and lance, divided between the two of them. So you are not a master swordsman.
No.
We're talking basic training with a sword. But they talk about what would you be training? It's written out like, here's how you fight. What's really interesting about that is that manual is almost identical to the 1796 British Cavalry Regiment, the regulations for their cavalry regiments. And that probably isn't a big shock. There was a lot of British influence onto the Spanish because they were allies during the Napoleonic Wars.
The French.
If you look at the hold on. If you look at the 1821 Spanish, this is the British light cavalry saber. These were exported to Spain and was adopted. This is also adopted in Mexico. It was adopted in Portugal. Like this became a very popular British ally sword. And suspiciously, the cavalry manual looks very similar to the British cavalry manual, probably because it was like, this makes sense. We'll just use that one.
I'm sure.
And translate it over. But because of that, it gives you a really good feel for what a new soldier would learn. But it gives us a good feel what a new Filipino would learn being taught by Spanish instructors, as part of it. And there's no way that those guys didn't take that technology home to the home tribe, or in a lot of cases, if you're a soldier that you've been stationed in the Philippines for 15 years, you probably picked up a wife in there somewhere, and you're probably not like, and I'm going to go to home to Spain. Why? Give me my retirement pay here. And they get made it, so you have all of these elements that are ways that you can fuse European fencing technology into, Filipino martial arts. And if you look at both that manual and that 1796 British manual, the way they teach their strokes, let me get this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thrusting on 1, 2, and 3. They use different lines. That should look suspiciously familiar.
Think about that.
How many abecedarios have you seen that the first 6 are 1, 2, 3, 4? Right?
How about like this?
3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, right. And so now form follows function, you know, and literally that's what the numbers that Spanish manual was. This is cut 1, cut dos, as you go through it, and those are the same numbers that are used in that other manual as well. So suspiciously, all of these numbering systems that came out are like, well, that looks familiar.
Yeah. Suspiciously. Yeah.
So to me, it's not like, and that's why I think I don't necessarily think that we fight exactly the same. There's a technology side of things with this. If I have this basket, this guard, I fight differently with a guard than I do. Okay, so this is a good weapon that would be used for antique gnunting. It's got the deity hilt. This is so antique blade. Look at that guard, right? That guard is right. It stops my hand from going on the sword, and it stops a weapon from running down onto my hand, and that's about it. I can't fight these two the same way. Right? That's just not going to happen. I can't. Right, way more protection. Between the two of those, so I can't fence weapon centric the way British military and Spanish saber did at the time, because I can't. I'll get my hand cut off.
No, for sure.
My hand if I fight that way, but the weapon systems are very, very similar.
There's definitely. Come on now. There's definitely was influence. When you see some of the Filipino with the Spanish with the guard. With the cage, where'd that come from?
So I pulled out one of my other antiques. This one's out of Batangas. Now, what does that look like, right? It's not. This is native.
Yeah.
That hilt is native. The guard's not awesome, but that blade, there might have been some influence in there somewhere.
Yeah. Just a little. You know what I mean? They might have.
They're not the same. Hold on, let me get this on the screen here. There we go. They're not the same, but that one looks a lot more like the other.
Yeah.
Than the other did. So, to me, you can't argue about that. There was an influence, and it may be a different influence in different islands. And obviously, there's nothing homogeneous about the Philippines. When you go through there, but it's different islands are going to have different influences, but it's kind of hard to argue that there was influence. Just
come on.
The names themselves are Spanish. So
all the surnames. I think depending on who you talk to and listen to, and I'm far from an authority, but I just take everybody's opinions, and I read and I listen to people, and you kind of draw your own conclusions sometimes. I think it's safe to say in Mindanao, some of the arts on there don't fall under FMA, Kuntao, the Silat, what have you. And I think that's legit. I think they have a legit argument there. So I guess it's fair to say maybe the Spanish just didn't colonize that, or thoroughly or effectively. Who knows?
Also, you're right. The Moros, they've been conquered. They've never been brought, culturally assimilated, for lack of a better term. Right? They've been beaten, but they're still a very, not, and homogeneous isn't right for them either, right? But they're their own culture, and they've retained those cultural elements to today. So.
Interesting. Now that book. Can you? I'm just curious for this book myself, and if you think of it, if you don't mind, Messenger.
Sure.
I find that so fascinating.
I hope your Spanish is good, because it's kind of old Spanish.
I had a bunch of it in high school, and so they'll give me a reason to revisit. Spanish, but that actually, I think you made a good call there, man. I think that might have been better in the demo. That was pretty good. But before, this is excellent, by the way. I just love your whole perspective on functionality and just what you're doing out there. I think it's fantastic. What as far as I mean, just so people, if they wanted to see more of what you got, YouTube is the Blackbird Training
Training.
Blackbird Training Group. Okay, I'm gonna list that, and then any other social media as far as what people can.
Our Facebook page is Blackbird Training Group as well. So that's,
you got a group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna check
that out.
And
obviously it's a reposting of a lot of, but I try to pull in a lot of sort of interesting pieces. I'll sometimes do live. This is someone dying. Not safe for work. This is someone dying of a knife attack. But if you're interested, this is of interest, you might want to click on it because it's a good example of something.
How a knife attack really looks like.
There's if people are interested, like I think for most of us, especially for me, like I don't do stick fighting because it's practical self-defense. I don't, especially if I have 2 sticks and you have 2 sticks, there's no regard for this is actually being, a practical martial art for the United States, right? That's not why I'm doing that particular, or sword fighting, which I do as well. Also not practical. But if I'm going to do it, I should do it well. Knife dueling is, again, not something I consider very practical. But there are cultures in the world where this stuff happens that you can still see. I ran into one Facebook page that is literally a bunch of knife and machete fights coming out of Colombia. And it's people freaking dying all the time. It's fairly hideous and gruesome, but it's really informative about how real life knife and machete. And there's a bunch of those knife cultures, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, have a lot of reverse blade knife dueling where they wrap this hand in like a cloth and they're reverse grip. And there's a whole bunch of videos out there.
Argentina, Eskrima Criolla.
Yeah.
Which I find it fascinating. They got the poncho, but I tell you, it's a lot of that lead hand kind of protecting barrier, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Colombia, I've seen some of those videos. It's like vicious.
There's a lot of, as much as we talk, and I'll talk about I don't consider reverse blade knife to be a great dueling structure. That's all they do is reverse blade knife. And when they hit with that, there's a lot of power in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that arcing, that definitely your weight coming down. But I'm with you like that. I like for range and all that. But man, you get hit with that. Like I said, in the subclavian or whatever, man. Good night. Wow. Yeah, I know, man. That Central America, some of those countries down there, just I've seen them. They're just just hacking each other. Oof.
I'm glad I don't happen to live there, and but those are the cultures that our martial arts come out of. You can see you find those same things in the Philippines. It's why their practical knife and weapon arts is because they are informed by reality relatively recently in a way that most of our other martial arts haven't been.
No, that's that's so true. Wow, great stuff. So all right, social media. We got your YouTube Blackbird Training Group, and you got the Facebook as well group. All right, I'm gonna list those. But this was fantastic. I learned just on that book you were talking about. That was fascinating. Wow.
It's a really cool. Like I said, I kind of geek out on the history side of things, but that was such a great example of.
Oh, I love the history. Yeah.
Spanish martial arts in the Philippines. It's literally there in writing.
At this point, I'm with the people, the Pinoys, over there, and their cultural and how proud, and I'm with all that. But you can't deny the Spanish. How can you?
Yeah.
It's well. But I want to thank you, sir. For coming on. This was this is fantastic. If you think about, like I said, that book, I'll have to fine tune my Spanish with all this time, with all this free time.
There's actually a really cool feature on there. It's in Google. You can get an ebook for it.
Okay.
When you're in the ebook, you highlight a paragraph and you can have it translated. It'll do a crappy Google Translate of it.
Yes.
But it'll give you at least the idea of what's going on.
No, for sure. Oh, yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Again, I want to thank you so much. So what I do is here after we're done, I link it up to YouTube, and then when I get that done, I never have an issue get it done the same night and all that. Doesn't take that long. It's not that bad. What I'll do is I'll directly send it to your wall, and then it'll be where it's on YouTube.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no, thank you for coming on. This is fantastic.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was great.
All right, sir. Take care and stay safe. Hopefully, we get through this before midsummer.
Absolutely, yeah. No, they're talking about whatever, slowly opening us back up. Whatever that means.
Yeah. We hear that around here, but we're so close to New York. I just for us, I just don't see it like to midsummer.
Yeah, we were literally Washington was the first case, and we did a pretty good job of controlling it. So the cases are relatively mild. Like we're on the declining end of the curve, but as soon as they open it back up, nobody's got it. So everybody's there's going to be a spike in infection. So
are we going to get a second wave? You know what I mean? That's the fear.
We can't not. I mean, there's no way that it can't happen. The hope is that infrastructure has gotten better so that we can handle it, hopefully, when it comes. And hopefully the science is better, that that there's more people out there infected with no symptoms than we think there are. And so that our fears are overblown and everything but I think we can, we have to open back up, and when we open back up, there will be more cases. The hope is that we can handle it.
We're going to be like really dangerous, getting dangerous, this economy,
Yep.
Well, hopefully for better times to come. All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, take care. All right. Be good.
Will
Stay
do.
safe. All right, that wraps that up, episode 25. Next Tuesday, I'm going to try to do one. It's a matter of just seeing who I'm going to get. And then, of course, next Thursday, a week from today, is definitely where I get 3 of them. We did the test pilot, which is on the group here with Abenir Khalis, Ka Marvin, Ka Vaughn, and Ka Joe. So that's going to be fun. So that'll be next Thursday at 7. And hopefully, again, I'm going to know shortly as far as who, possibly Tuesday. All right. Good night.